Hi friends, and happy Halloween week. I know we're a little while away, but I had to give you a good lead in case you wanted films for this weekend. I always want to do Halloween videos, but it's so hard because I feel like it's oversaturated with the same recommendations, and I have put out my lists in the past. They have not changed really. And with talking about what's coming to streaming and what's coming out each month, I cover new releases, so I'm updating as we go. So for today's video, I've come up with a spin on the normal Halloween recommendations. I'm gonna give you a popular Halloween time film, and then I'm gonna give you a suggestion for its evil twin. It's the same idea or same themes, but a twist on it, a little bit of a darker vibe or lesser known. So you can either watch it as a double feature or sub it out if you normally watch the other film every year. They don't all have the Halloween night theme, but it is something fresh, and hopefully there's something on this list you haven't seen before. Once we get started, you'll understand the idea, and let's start with Hocus Pocus because everyone watches this around Halloween time. Hocus Pocus is a nostalgic classic starring Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy, and Thora Birch. The PG 90s fantasy comedy adventure is the story of three evil witches who are awakened by a family when they move to Salem. That was my creepy witch voice. I don't think I can pull it off. I always found this film to be so scary, kind of like The Witches when I was a kid, but watching it now, it's so kooky, funny, and silly. The imagery just creeped me out. I think it's the whole painting and, the curse. But there's something about the music and the whole cozy vibe of it that is just really both scary and nostalgic, which is kind of what childhood is. Maybe for me, maybe for some of you guys since you're horror fans as well. So I'm gonna completely ruin it for you guys by my recommendation, which is pure horror, and this is Witchin' and Bitchin'. Witchin' and Bitchin' is the perfect evil twin. This is an action fantasy horror comedy, and it has all of the same subgenres and tones, just dialed all the way up. It's a must watch for all horror fans. The Spanish film is about a gang of armed robbers that think they have found a safe hideout only to realize witches surround them. And this coven, just like in Hocus Pocus, is anything but stereotypical. They're kooky, silly, and downright bizarre. Expect the unexpected. It's the same kind of offbeat, wacky vibe as the Sanderson sisters, just with a more intense rating and, of course, a lot more violence. This next one I'm so excited to talk to you about. I know that Nightmare Before Christmas is the basic bitch of horror movies. I've seen people say that, but I love it. I was an emo kid living in a very small town, and I had my little Nightmare Before Christmas pencil case, and I thought I was alternative. And I know this film can obviously double as a Christmas movie, but either way, it's a holiday classic. I watch it both ways, on Halloween or Christmas. The musical dark animation is the story of Halloween Town, where Pumpkin Jack Skellington is bored of the same old routine for Halloween every year. So he ventures out of the boundaries and finds Christmas land, where he takes something that is not of his world. I cannot tell you how excited I am for the evil twin. This film, I watched it just doing research for this video, and it blew me away. If you like odd things, you're gonna love it. It's called Blood, Tea, and Red String. It's not a musical, but it has a strange connection to the core story of The Nightmare Before Christmas. This is a beautiful, whimsical, handmade stop frame animation, and it tells the dark story of rustic creatures who live a beautiful life until there's a fight over this really messed up doll, sending a family of creatures on an adventure to take back what they believe is theirs from blood-drinking mice. Yes, blood-drinking mice, which they drink in their little teacups. Too cute. This film has some beautiful music, and although there's some squeaks, it's somewhat a silent story. It is simple, but every frame is art, and it just makes sense. And it has a somber yet strong moral lesson. And if you want, you can watch this one for free on Plex. Absolutely beautiful. Next, we have to talk about Ginger Snaps. Ginger Snaps is a horror staple in general. It's more of a teen horror, but since its release, it's been put into a lot of people's yearly rewatch rotation. It's a coming-of-age horror following two strange goth sisters who are obsessed with the dark side of life, making a pact that they will die together. But coinciding with her first period, Ginger is bitten, and the metaphor for womanhood comes full circle when she begins to change. I love this movie. It's such a fun teen horror. It sounds so strange saying, but Ginger Snap people know. It's fun, it's slick, it's edgy. It's a bit like Jennifer's Body if I was to compare it to something of the same tone, but let's go with some themes that are quite similar. And for this one, you can make it a marathon. I've got two I have to mention. The first is When Animals Dream. When Animals Dream is a more somber, lonely version of Ginger Snaps. It's a Danish film that follows a 16-year-old who lives with her ill mother and her father. But when grisly crimes begin to take place in their small island town, she feels a change deep within. The film is more serious and dramatic. I would say it doesn't have the sisterhood element. So the other one, of course, I'm going to recommend, and I know you guys have probably typed it in the comments, it's Raw. I know Raw is more well known, but it truly is a dark story and it takes it a little bit further in the gore department. But what I like is it's still the story of two sisters in a coming of age situation, just like Ginger Snaps. This French body horror follows a girl who just started attending the same vet school as her older sister, but the hazing process awakens something within her. Raw is not for the faint of heart, but it definitely has some of the same elements that I loved in Ginger Snaps. It just gets a little bit more bloody, which is strange because Ginger Snaps is pretty gory. Next, I have to talk about one of my favorite movies, let alone Halloween movies. I wouldn't call this a horror, but it is a dark adventure. It's practical magic. This is my favorite witch film, and there's no guessing why. Nicole Kidman in this film is like my idol, but practical magic really has my whole heart. This film oozes fall and Halloween vibes from the magical house, which the set dressing is just so impeccable with the detail, and the nostalgia feels so much greater in this film because we start watching them as little girls and then we see them return home to this house. So it's we get to relive their childhood. Anyway, I'm so sorry. Practical magic is about two sisters again, two witch sisters who are raised by their kooky aunts in a small town full of closed-minded people. But they also live with a family curse that prevents them from finding love. This movie truly has it all. It makes me laugh, it makes me cry, it has just a beautiful love story. I cry all the time in these videos, I swear to God, I'm not crying today. I feel like The Craft is most similar in the terms of a evil twin. It presents the bad side of magic, even though that is shown again in Practical Magic, it has everything. But The Craft also has that sisterhood, which we love, but it's just too obvious. It's too obvious. So I went deep with this one and I found something that is truly rotten. But I love. This is called The Demon. The Demon is a dramatic Italian horror movie that's kind of like The Love Witch, but a lot more evil. It's about a woman who practices witchcraft, hoping it will bring her the affection of a man in her village that she deeply desires. The wild thing about this film is if you've never heard of it, people believe that there's certain scenes in this movie that influenced The Exorcist. The protagonist really leans into being lovesick, and there is this moment where I know exactly what they're talking about. It's absolutely wild. The whole movie is really brilliantly done, and it has a couple of parallels to Practical Magic. It has, again, the possession scene, which they do have in Practical Magic. It has everything. The town turned against the family, and of course, it starts with love spells. But let me tell you, it ends a lot more grim. It's a very beautiful movie. Just a little bit different to my typical recommendation, but I really recommend checking it out. I loved it. Check it out if you're looking for a more classic, dark, witchy film. But of course, The Love Witch is also a good recommendation, which I kind of throw in there. It's more similar to this film, so if you want, you can do a double feature of those as well. Okay, we're kind of going into a different territory here. A lot of people like to watch slashers during Halloween, and what better slasher to watch than Halloween. Obviously a huge favorite for this holiday. This is John Carpenter's Halloween starring Jamie Lee Curtis. It's set on Halloween night. How many times have I said Halloween? And it's the story of a babysitter who was stalked by a masked man in a small town. I have two evil twins for this, but more so they're less discussed and they're quite similar to this film. So maybe just triplets, just twins, maybe not even evil. First is Terror Train. Like Halloween, the protagonist in this film is Jamie Lee Curtis, but instead of being stalked by a masked man on Halloween night, she and a bunch of her peers are stuck on a party train with a masked psychopath picking them off one by one. The film does have more moving parts, literally, but they are similar in so many ways. The party is a costume party, and if you didn't know better, the setup plays out exactly like a Halloween Halloween party. Also, fun fact, this film has David Copperfield in it, and it's one of the only times he's appeared in a film not as himself. I read that in the trivia, but his name in the credits is the magician, so I don't know how accurate that is. It's definitely got the same late 70s, early 80s feel, and if you love Halloween, you definitely need to check this one out. And of course, if you keep up with Does This Offend You, which is a show I do with my friend Nightmare Maven, you will know about Fright. This was considered the first babysitting horror movie, and it's said to be a huge influence for Halloween. The British thriller horror follows a babysitter who arrives to a house to work for a couple for the first time, but she doesn't get the full story, and they leave her unaware in danger. I think this one's really interesting to look at from the perspective of starting a trope in horror movies, and if you have a marathon about babysitting horror, it has to go on the list. Last but not least, a favorite of horror fans all year round, but especially on Halloween, is Scream, because it's such a classic and so fun to watch as a group. Scream is a film that needs no introduction. It is the ultimate teen slasher, which follows the story of Sydney, who on the 1-year anniversary of her mother's murder is terrorized by a masked killer. Now, as tragedy surrounds her, it's any guess who the killer is. The film made history with an extensive franchise, TV show, requel. It's beloved by the horror community, and on Halloween night, it's very hard to go to a party or go out in public and not see a ghost face somewhere. And it's also the perfect balance of grisly kills and badass, bitchy Gale Weathers one-liners. I love Gale Weathers, she's my favorite character. Obviously, this was a hard act to follow, and while everyone was obsessed with going to see Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, Frailty, and even Idle Hands in cinemas, there was one film that didn't get a US release in the theaters, and it very much deserves your attention, and some of you I know will love this film. If you've seen it, you probably love it if you're a slasher fan. It's called Cherry Falls. Cherry Falls, like Scream, plays into the unbreakable slasher rules, but this time it's focused on the rule of being a virgin with a twist. In Cherry Falls, teens are being killed off in horrific scenes because they are virgins, which means when the pattern is spotted, it's a rush for these high schoolers, played by 30-year-olds, to lose their V cards. This movie, of course, stars the beautiful, late and great Brittany Murphy, and it's a must-watch for those who love the slasher genre, especially if you like it with a meta edge. It's really similar to Scream, but stands completely on its own. It even has the same setup with the kids and the parent-cop dynamic, and the secret dark history of a small town. It really is the perfect double screening for Scream. I wouldn't even call it an evil twin, more of a lesser known cousin. I know all of you probably have heard of this one, and if you haven't seen it in years or it's been on your to watch list, why not bump it up for this season? It has a really low score on IMDb, which I think puts people off, but I'm here to tell you it is worth your time if you like other slashers of the same vein. I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, those kinds of ones. It's perfect. It fits in really well with them. I don't know why it gets removed from those lists. I mean, Brittany Murphy, come on. And that is my list. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have some recommendations for well-known horror movies that people love watching around Halloween, and they're evil twins, leave them in the comments below. We love reading them. We love recommendations. The more the merrier here, or the scarier. That was so bad. I hope you guys have a great, safe week. If you have any events leading up to Halloween, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye, friends.